We all want to be loved, right?
Yeah,
But how can you tell if someone truly loves you or is just using you?
that's a great question.
I mean, relationships can be tricky sometimes.
Definitely. It's not always easy to tell the difference, especially when you're caught up in those early stages.
You're totally right. It's like you can get so swept away by the excitement and those like rose-colored glasses that you miss some pretty big red flags. But we're not going to let that happen.
Definitely not.
Today, we're going to equip you with the tools to spot those red flags early on so you can protect your heart and your well-being.
Love that.
We're going deep into the signs that you might be in a relationship that's more about taking than giving.
Yeah. And trust me, some of these signs can be surprisingly subtle.
Okay, so spill the tea. What kind of red flags should we be looking out for?
All right, first up is unrealistic expectations.
Expectations. Everyone has them, right?
Exactly. But there's a fine line between healthy expectations and those that are, well, a bit much.
So how can you tell if someone's expectations are crossing that line?
It's about being aware of the difference between reasonable requests and those that are completely unreasonable.
Okay, so like wanting your partner to be faithful, supportive,
Yeah.
and, generally a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Those are healthy expectations, right?
Exactly.
But expecting them to constantly cater to your every whim, like read your mind or anticipate your every need without you even communicating them.
Right. That ventures into unrealistic territory.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for disappointment, frustration, and resentment on both sides.
Absolutely. And it often goes hand in hand with our next red flag, which is entitlement.
Entitlement.
Oh, yeah. This is when a partner feels like they're doing you a favor just by being with you. Like you should be internally grateful for their presence.
Wow. That's a bit self-centered, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. They believe their presence is a privilege.
Oh, I see. Like you're supposed to be bowing down at their feet just because they graced you with their attention.
Yeah, and it's a big red flag. Love and respect should be earned, not expected just for existing.
Exactly. A healthy relationship is about mutual respect and appreciation, not one person feeling superior to the other.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the public versus private persona red flag.
That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Imagine someone who's all charming and attentive in public, but behind closed doors, they treat you poorly.
Ugh, that's like a classic Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation.
Right. It's manipulative. They use their public image to mask their true behavior.
It's like they're living a double life, and you're the only one who sees their true color.
Exactly. And that can really mess with your head.
Yeah. Like you start to doubt your own perceptions and wonder if you're imagining things.
Right, because everyone else thinks they're so great. But it's important to trust your gut instincts.
Absolutely. If something feels off, it probably is.
Definitely. And speaking of feeling off, our next red flag is a lack of genuine interest.
Oh, this one hits close to home for a lot of people, I think. It's more than just forgetting an anniversary or not remembering your favorite food, right?
Exactly. It's deeper than that. It's about a lack of curiosity about your thoughts, feelings, and dreams.
Like they're just not really present in the relationship, even when they're physically there.
It can feel like you're invisible.
Like they might ask, "How was your day?" But their eyes glaze over while you're talking, and they clearly haven't absorbed a word you've said.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. It's about feeling unseen and unheard. And that can be really damaging to your self-esteem.
And it often goes hand in hand with another red flag we need to watch out for, which is a one-sided relationship.
Oh, this one is a major issue. And before we dive in, it's important to acknowledge that no relationship is perfectly balanced all the time.
Right, like it's not about keeping score of who does the dishes more often or splitting every single expense down the middle.
Exactly. It's about the overall dynamic.
The feeling of reciprocity.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Both partners should be actively contributing to the relationship, emotionally, practically, in all the ways that matter.
So like if you find yourself constantly initiating plans, conversations, or even just basic gestures of affection,
Right.
and you're always the one going the extra mile while your partner just sits back and enjoys the ride.
Exactly. That's a sign that the scales might be tipped a little too far in one direction.
It's like being on a seesaw, where you're putting in all the effort to keep it balanced, while the other person just sits there enjoying the view. And eventually you're going to get tired of doing all the heavy lifting.
Absolutely. And that can make it really hard to have those important conversations that every couple needs to have to stay connected and grow together.
Ah, yes. The dreaded hard conversations. Those are inevitable in any relationship. But how someone approaches those conversations, can speak volumes.
Absolutely. In a healthy relationship, both partners should be open to hearing each other's concerns, even if those concerns are a little uncomfortable.
Right. It's about being willing to listen with an open mind and heart,
Uh-huh.
and then working together to find solutions. But if your partner avoids accountability, shuts down communication, or tries to turn things around and blame you,
Right. That's a huge red flag.
it's like they're more interested in protecting their own ego than in nurturing the relationship.
And that leads us to another crucial aspect of healthy relationships, which is respecting boundaries.
Oh, boundaries are so important. But I think sometimes people get confused about what boundaries actually are and how to set them effectively.
You're right. It can be tricky. But think of a boundary as a line you draw to protect your physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
Okay, so it's about knowing what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, and communicating that clearly to your partner.
So it can be about big things like major life decisions, but it can also be about smaller everyday things.
Exactly.
Like maybe you're okay with holding hands in public, but you're not okay with PDA beyond that. Or maybe you need some alone time every evening to recharge, and you don't want to be interrupted during that time.
Right. It's about respecting each other's needs and limits.
And if someone repeatedly pushes those boundaries, even after you've clearly communicated them,
That's a major sign of disrespect.
it's like they're saying, your feelings and needs don't matter as much as my desires.
And that can be incredibly damaging to the relationship.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Unrealistic expectations, entitlement, the public versus private persona, lack of genuine interest, one-sided relationships, difficulty with hard conversations, and disrespecting boundaries.
Yeah, that's a lot. But there's one more red flag I want to touch on today, and that's stagnation.
Stagnation. This one sounds a bit more subtle than the others.
Yeah, it can be, but it's just as important to recognize. Think of it this way.
Yeah.
Healthy relationships should evolve and grow over time.
Right, like it's natural for things to change and shift as you both grow as individuals. And the relationship needs to grow and adapt along with those individual changes.
Exactly. But when a relationship becomes stagnant, it feels like you're stuck in a rut. There's no excitement, no newness, no shared goals or dreams for the future.
So it's not that every day needs to be a whirlwind of excitement, but there should be a sense of forward momentum.
Exactly. A feeling that you're both moving in the same direction, both as individuals and as a couple.
Okay, so let's imagine a relationship where you've fallen into a comfortable routine. You're both content, there's no major conflict,
Right.
but there's also no spark, no passion, no sense of adventure. You've stopped trying new things together, you rarely have deep conversations, and the relationship just feels flat.
Yeah, that's a good example of stagnation, and it can sneak up on you slowly. You might not even realize it's happening until you're feeling unfulfilled and disconnected.
So we've talked about 8 red flags to watch out for in relationships. And some of these can be pretty subtle, but they're all signs that something might be off.
Right. It's all about paying attention to those subtle cues and trusting your gut instincts.
Exactly. You deserve to be in a relationship that's built on mutual respect, love, and support.
Absolutely. And recognizing these red flags is the first step toward creating that kind of relationship.
It's about knowing your worth and not settling for anything less. And we're going to help you do just that.
That's right. We'll be right back to dive deeper into some real-life examples of these red flags in action.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back.
All right, so we've learned about those 8 relationship red flags, but let's get real for a second.
Yeah.
What do these red flags actually look like in, everyday life? Can you give us some real-world examples?
Sure. Let's start with unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
Imagine you're dating someone who constantly criticizes you.
Oh, like all the time?
Yeah, like they nitpick your appearance, your job, your hobbies, even your friends.
Ouch. That sounds rough.
It is. And it can be a sign that they have these fixed ideas of who you should be.
And they're trying to mold you into that vision.
Exactly. And that can be really damaging to your self-esteem. You start to question yourself and wonder if you're good enough.
Absolutely. It's like they don't appreciate the unique individual you are.
Right. And sometimes it's not even intentional. It can stem from their own insecurities.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like they might be afraid of not being good enough themselves.
So they try to control you to feel more secure.
Exactly. But that's never healthy in a relationship.
Not at all. So what about the one-sided relationship red flag? What does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, picture this. You're always the one who initiates plans.
Okay.
You're texting first, making all the effort to see them, and they rarely reciprocate.
Ugh. I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's like you're the only one putting in the work to keep the relationship going.
Yeah, it can feel very lonely and draining.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, like, do they even care as much as I do?
Right. And that's a valid question to ask yourself. Because in a healthy relationship,
Yeah,
both partners should be putting in effort.
absolutely. It's about that balance of give and take.
Exactly. Now let's talk about boundaries.
Okay.
What if your partner keeps pushing your boundaries, even after you've been clear about what you're comfortable with?
That's tricky. Can you give us a concrete example?
Sure. Let's say you've told your partner you need some time alone each day
Okay.
to recharge, but they constantly text you, call you. They just don't give you that space.
Right.
That's a clear boundary violation.
It is. And I think in that situation, it's easy to feel torn between wanting to be responsive to your partner, but also needing to honor your own need for space.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in, but that's why clear communication and mutual respect are so important.
For sure. Because if someone repeatedly disregards your boundaries,
Yeah,
it can really erode trust.
absolutely. You start to feel like your needs don't matter to them.
Right, like you're not being seen or heard.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears and talk about stagnation. Remember that one?
Yeah, the subtle one.
Right. So imagine you've been with your partner for a while.
Okay.
Things are pretty comfortable. No major fights, but
No.
there's no spark anymore.
I see. So you're basically just going through the motions.
Kind of. You've
Right.
stopped trying new things. You rarely have deep conversations. There's just no excitement.
Sounds like the relationship has hit a plateau.
Exactly. And while it's great to be comfortable with your partner, there's a difference between comfortable and complacent.
Right. Because if there's no growth, no evolution, no shared goals or dreams for the future, that can lead to feeling stuck and unfulfilled.
Exactly. And that's when resentment and boredom can start to creep in.
So what do we do if we recognize these red flags in our own relationships? Is it possible to, turn things around?
Definitely. It all starts with awareness.
Okay, so first, you have to be able to identify the issue.
Right. Once you know what the problem is, you can start to address it.
How?
By having honest conversations with your partner.
Okay. But I imagine that can be super intimidating, right?
It can be. And we'll be back after a short break to talk about some effective communication strategies for having those tough conversations.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle those tough conversations.
They can be challenging, but they're crucial for a healthy relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we approach those conversations in a way that's, constructive instead of turning it into a big fight?
Well, first of all, remember to approach it with empathy.
Empathy, okay.
Try to understand your partner's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
So it's not about attacking or blaming.
Right. It's about expressing your feelings in a way that's honest, but also respectful.
Okay, so instead of, launching into a laundry list of everything they've done wrong,
Yeah,
it's more about focusing on how their actions are making you feel.
exactly. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you could try saying something like, "When I share something with you and I don't feel heard, it makes me feel unimportant."
I see. So you're focusing on the impact of their behavior.
Right. It's less accusatory and more about how it's affecting you.
That makes sense. It's like you're not saying they're a bad person, but their actions are having a negative impact on you.
Exactly. And timing is important too.
Timing.
Don't try to have a serious conversation when you're both stressed or tired.
All right, like in the middle of an argument or right before bed. Not the best time.
Definitely not. Choose a time when you can both be calm and present.
Okay, that makes sense. Create a safe space for open and honest communication.
Exactly. So you can both feel comfortable expressing yourselves without fear of judgment.
Okay, so let's say you've tried to have those conversations, but things aren't improving. The relationship still feels off. What then?
That's a tough situation. And it's a time to really ask yourself some honest questions.
Like what?
Well, start with the basics. Are you truly happy in this relationship?
Right, that's a big one.
It is. And are your needs being met?
Because if they're not, that's a problem.
Definitely. And finally, do you feel like you're both committed to growing together?
So it's not just about individual happiness, but also about the relationship itself.
Exactly. A healthy relationship involves growth and evolution, both individually and as a couple.
And those are some pretty big questions to ponder. And if the answers aren't what you were hoping for, that can be really painful.
It can be, but sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself
Yeah.
is to acknowledge when a relationship has run its course.
So sometimes it's not about trying to force things to work. It's about recognizing when it's time to move on.
Exactly. And remember, ending a relationship doesn't mean you failed.
It means you're prioritizing your well-being.
Exactly. And creating space for something healthier and more fulfilling to come into your life.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the red flags, but it's equally important to recognize what we should be striving for in a relationship.
Absolutely. A healthy relationship is built on mutual respect, trust, open communication.
Okay, so those are like the foundational elements.
Right. And both partners should feel safe and supported to be their authentic selves.
Ah, that's so important. Feeling like you can truly be yourself without fear of judgment.
Exactly. And feeling valued and appreciated for who you are.
It's like knowing that your partner has your back. They're there to celebrate your wins and support you through the tough times.
Exactly. You feel like you're on the same team, working together.
Yeah, like true partners in every sense of the word.
Exactly. And healthy relationships also involve a balance of intimacy and independence.
Oh, right. That's important too.
Yeah, each person needs their own space to pursue their own passions and interests.
But you still come together and connect on a deeper level.
Exactly. You support each other's growth, both as individuals and as a couple.
So it's not about becoming completely enmeshed, but about finding that sweet spot between togetherness and individuality.
Right. And remember, no relationship is perfect. There will be bumps along the way.
Disagreements are inevitable.
Exactly. But what matters is how you handle those disagreements.
In a healthy relationship, you're willing to work through those challenges together with empathy and compassion.
Exactly. And a commitment to making the relationship work.
So it's not about finding a perfect partner or expecting a fairy tale romance.
Yeah.
It's about finding someone who's willing to put in the effort to grow and learn alongside you and to create a love that is supportive, inspiring, and, real.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, you are absolutely worthy of that kind of love.
That's a beautiful message to end on. So to all our listeners out there, as you navigate the complex world of relationships, remember to trust your gut, honor your boundaries, and always strive for relationships that bring joy, growth, and a deep sense of connection.
Absolutely. And never stop learning and growing, both within your relationships and as an individual.
The journey of love is a lifelong adventure. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all in this together. Thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive.